There's something unsettling about places left behind. The silence, the shadows, the memories that refuse to die. But sometimes, the scariest moments aren't hidden in ruins at all. Tonight, I'll share with you 6 true horror stories, 3 from abandoned places and 3 from unexpected encounters that remind us, fear finds us when we least expect it. Our first story takes us inside an abandoned church at dusk, a place where silence should have meant peace, but instead became something far more sinister. A drenched evening when Eliza stumbled upon the old church. The weathered stone facade loomed like a specter in the mist, its bell tower reaching toward the sky as if to grasp the swirling vapor above. Across the brittle grass she felt an inexplicable pull, the kind of pull one feels toward a secret long buried. The village had whispered tales about the place, prayers left unanswered, shadows that moved against the light. Local children dared each other to approach, but no one ever entered. With a glance back at the winding path she had taken, Eliza stepped inside, the heavy door creaking ominously as it swung wide. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of dust and decay. Broken pews lay scattered about, some overturned, others seemingly left in hasty abandon. Sunlight peeked through the stained glass windows, casting fragmented colors on the floor, but the effect was disconcerting, as if the light itself were struggling to enter. As she moved deeper into the church, there was an unsettling silence that wrapped around her, rendering the world outside an afterthought. The whispers of her village friends echoed in her mind, warnings of the strange happenings that surrounded this place. Some spoke of figures seen in the corners of vision, always just out of focus, while others recalled the chilling sound of children laughing, only to turn and find no one there. Eliza dismissed the thoughts, laughing nervously to herself, her footsteps the only sound breaking the profound quiet. Just as she reached the altar, she noticed a journal resting atop it, worn and dusty. She picked it up, turning the fragile pages, revealing entries written in an erratic scrawl. They spoke of visions, dreadful nightmares that intruded on waking hours, of an entity that demanded attention, a figure that emerged from the shadows. The last entry was frantic and incoherent, hinting at a mounting dread, a warning to never look behind. A chill raced down her spine. She felt an unshakable compulsion to glance back. Slowly, with the weight of foreboding upon her, she turned. There, in the far corner of the church, an unnatural darkness seemed to thicken, pulling at the corners of her vision. A silhouette lurked there, unmoving, just beyond the edges of the feeble light. Panic surged through her. Eliza tore her gaze away and dashed toward the door, heart pounding in her chest. Her fingers fumbled on the ancient handle, dread pooling in her stomach as she felt the heaviness of unseen eyes on her back. Just when the door swung open, a cold voice, almost a whisper, brushed against her ear. "Stay." She bolted into the fog, gasping for air, convinced she could still feel that dark presence at her heels. She ran down the path, the mist coiling around her legs like a serpent. The village lights glimmered in the distance, small beacons of hope, yet as she sprinted towards them, an agonizing realization settled in her mind. She could still hear laughter, soft, taunting, echoing in the air, and with every step she took, the laughter persisted, blending seamlessly into the whispers of the night. As she reached the edge of the village, Eliza stumbled, tripping over her own feet. She looked back one last time, breathless, heart racing. The church stood stark against the fog, yet it was different now. Something about it was more alive, pulsing with a life of its own. The silhouette remained in the window, no longer a shadow but a figure, a person, grinning, watching her. The old church doors creaked open slowly, and the laughter crescendoed, intertwining with the fading whispers of her name, beckoning her back. She stood transfixed for a moment, the horror of her flight replaced by a growing curiosity, a need to understand what called her. Was it truly a nightmare, or had she awakened something that would never let her go? The fog cocooned her as she took a hesitant step back toward the darkness, and the laughter enveloped her like a shroud. Our journey continues. This next abandoned place hides secrets that will send shivers down your spine. Let's step inside. The fog hung thickly over the abandoned nursing home, a mausoleum for lost souls nestled at the edge of a forgotten town. The sun had long surrendered to a dim twilight, casting elongated shadows that skittered across the cracked pavement. The air was heavy with an unsettling stillness, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves, whispering secrets of those who once called this place home. Clara, curious and impulsive, felt an overwhelming urge to explore the decaying structure. Her friends had dared her, coaxing her with tales of the tragic past, stories of patients who had wandered the halls, their cries echoing into silence after the building had been shut down decades ago. Driven by a mix of bravado and dread, she pushed the heavy door open, the sound resonating like a funeral bell in the suffocating silence. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the scent of mildew and time. Each room told a story of neglect, with old wheelchairs abandoned, their wheels frozen in place. Water dripped from broken pipes overhead, creating a rhythmic, intermittent soundtrack that only heightened her unease. Clara's heart raced with every step she took, the floorboards creaking under her weight, as if protesting her presence. As she moved further in, she came across a room adorned with faded photographs, black and white images of smiling faces watching her, each with a story of suffering etched into their expressions. Clara shivered, feeling almost as if those eyes were following her, judging her intrusion. A sudden chill slid down her spine when she noticed one particular photo, a girl with wide, terrified eyes, her mouth agape in a silent scream. Pushing the morbid thoughts away, Clara kept exploring. The dim light from her phone cast eerie shadows against the peeling walls, creating distortions that played tricks on her mind. She stumbled into a common area, where sunlight once danced upon the worn furniture, now surrendered to dust and decay. The silence felt suffocating, as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting. And then a soft whisper floated through the air, barely audible but undeniably there. "Help me." It was faint, the kind of sound that danced on the edges of comprehension, evoking a shiver of recognition. Clara's heart raced, her instincts screamed at her to leave, to flee this cursed place. But curiosity gnawed at her, urging her to follow the sound. She walked toward the source, the whisper growing clearer, more desperate with every step. It seemed to originate from a room at the end of the hall, the door slightly ajar, shadows spilling into the corridor like ink. Clara pushed the door open, her breath hitching in her throat. Inside, a child sat on the floor, her back turned to Clara. The girl's hair was disheveled, matted with dirt. "Please," the child said, "help me." Her voice cracked, and Clara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The instinct to comfort surged within her, even as alarms blared in her mind. She took a tentative step forward, only to hear the girl continue to plead, the words dripping with despair. "Help me, they won't let me go." Clara's heart sank, the room was suffocating, the air thickening around her as dread enveloped her. "Who won't let you go?" she asked, her voice quaking. The child slowly turned, and Clara's stomach twisted violently. The girl's eyes were hollow, devoid of light, an emptiness echoing in her gaze that sent waves of terror coursing through Clara's veins. "You should leave," the girl croaked, her lips curling into an unnaturally wide grin that cracked her face like fragile porcelain. "They're coming for you now." Clara turned to run, panic clawing at her throat, but the door slammed shut before she could escape. The whispers grew louder, an unholy chorus surrounding her, suffocating her. Shadows curled and tightened, coiling around her limbs like serpents. The whispers echoed in her ears, overlapping, each voice more frantic than the last. "Stay with us. You belong with us." As the darkness enveloped her, Clara felt herself being pulled into an abyss, the weight of countless souls pressing down upon her. Her screams evaporated into the air, drowned by the haunting wails of those who had come before. Clara's last thought was not of fear, but an overwhelming rush of resignation, realizing that this nursing home was not abandoned at all. It was very much alive, and it craved her as it had craved the others. The once comforting silence transformed into a chorus of dread, forever entwined with the echoes of a girl seeking solace among the lost. And now we move to the final abandoned location, where the eerie whispers and shadows hold a story you won't soon forget. The fog rolled in thick, wrapping around the old lighthouse like a shroud. The beam of light from the top flickered, struggling against the encroaching darkness that seemed to seep from the depths of the ocean. Claire had always been drawn to the lighthouse, its towering structure a solitary sentinel over the crashing waves. That evening, she felt compelled to explore it one final time before winter fully settled in. As she approached, the wooden steps creaked under her weight, sound echoing strangely in the still air. The door at the entrance was ajar, swinging slightly on rusty hinges as though inviting her inside. She pushed it open and stepped into the cool, damp interior. Dust motes danced in the narrow beam of light that streamed through the windows. The air was thick with the scent of salt and decay. Claire's heart raced as she climbed the winding staircase, each step resonating with a hollow thud. The light at the top flickered erratically, casting bizarre shadows that twisted and shifted in her peripheral vision. She shook her head, trying to dispel the unsettling sensation creeping up her spine. Was it the old stories she'd heard as a child that haunted her still? Tales of sailors lost to the sea, their souls forever wandering, lured by the light only to perish in the darkness. Reaching the top, she stepped into the lantern room. The view was sweeping, a vast expanse of ocean blanketed in fog. But something was wrong. The lighthouse's light, once a beacon of hope, was now dim and struggling, pulsing like a fading heartbeat. As she approached the old mechanisms, a shiver ran through her as the temperature dropped suddenly. Her breath came out in visible puffs, white clouds dispersing in the chilly air. Then she heard it, a faint whisper. It fluttered at the edges of her hearing, sent chills down her spine. Straining to listen, she could make out words, syllables twisted with anguish and desperation. "Help us. Trap. Lost." The words echoed, reverberating off the walls, pulling her into an abyss of dread. Claire turned to leave, but the door slammed shut. Panic gripped her as she pounded on the heavy wood. "Let me out," she screamed, but the walls began to close in. The whispers grew more insistent, wrapping around her like wet ropes, each syllable tugging at her soul. "Stay with us. Join us." Desperate, she stumbled back, knocking over an old lantern that shattered on the floor, flames licking at the dry wood. The whispers turned to screams, a cacophony of voices rising amidst the crackling sound of the fire. Shadows darted just beyond her vision, hungrily approaching, their faces twisted in agony. Claire's heart raced, pounding in her ears, drowning out the chaos surrounding her. In a moment of terror-driven clarity, she reached for the window. Throwing it open, the wind rushed in, fierce and biting, extinguishing the flames but whipping the fog into a frenzy. She clambered outside onto the narrow ledge, her heart in her throat as she looked down at the jagged rocks below. There, beneath the surface of the water, she caught sight of them. Figures, pale and distorted, faces frozen in a grimace of despair. They reached up toward her, desperate yet distant, the unmistakable imprint of life twisted by despair. With a horrified realization, Claire understood. They were not just lost souls, but the former keepers of the lighthouse, trapped for eternity. She was the next to be claimed. The whispers grew louder, drowning out her screams as she lost her footing, plummeting into the icy depths. The ocean swallowed her whole, and in her last breath, the horrific truth settled in. A new voice joined the chorus of despair, echoing in the darkness below, as she became part of the legend that lured others to their doom. In the lighthouse, the light flickered once more, its beam shining down toward the abyss while the fog thickened, waiting for the next wandering soul. But the darkness doesn't stay locked inside abandoned walls. Sometimes, it follows us into places we thought were safe, ordinary places, until the night revealed something far more terrifying. These are the unexpected encounters. The first of these encounters begins in a playground that seemed completely abandoned, until the night proved otherwise. The town lay shrouded in a heavy fog, the kind that clung to the ground like an invisible hand gripping at the throat of every passerby. It was late autumn, and the trees stood bare, skeletal against the gray sky. Eleanor could barely remember the last time she had ventured out in this weather, but something had compelled her. Curiosity, perhaps, or an unshakable sense of dread, spiraling within her mind like the mist outside. She walked slowly, the wet pavement glistening under the flickering streetlights that struggled to remain lit against the enveloping gloom. The chill cut through her coat, sending shivers down her spine. Eleanor glanced around, the quiet weight of the fog wrapping around her like a shroud. No sound but the distant echo of her own footsteps kept her company. As she approached the old playground at the end of the street, memories flooded back, days playing with friends, laughter resonating in the air. But that was before the screams whispered through the night and before the air became thick with fear. The vanished children had become a ghost story of sorts, a dark curiosity that edged into each conversation, but never lingered long, as if no one wanted to acknowledge an evil that had tainted their little town. As Eleanor stepped into the playground, the swing set creaked, unsettling in its silence, swaying as if pushed by unseen hands. The air felt charged with something other, the remnants of joy now twisted into shadows lurking just out of sight. She approached cautiously, the mist curling around her like fingers beckoning her closer. Then she heard it, a faint giggle, light and airy, drifting just beyond reach. Eleanor froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The sound was innocent yet sinister, striking a chord somewhere deep within her. She called out, clearing her throat. "Hello? Is someone there?" The fog seemed to absorb her voice, wrapping it into the ether. Another giggle, slightly louder, echoed back, followed by whispers. The voices were indistinct, a chorus of children's laughter punctuated by pauses that stretched far too long, suspended like the swing above her. She took a hesitant step forward, the grass squelching under her weight, each sound amplified in the still night. Then, in the far corner of the playground, she saw movement. Glimpses of tiny figures flitting between the trees, playful yet eerie, darting just out of her direct line of sight. Pangs of panic rose within her as she instinctively retreated. Torn between fear and curiosity, she shifted closer, trying to discern what lurked just beyond the veil of fog. With a sudden rush, the laughter grew louder, more urgent, spinning around her, tantalizing yet terrifying. Desperately, she yelled again, "Please show yourselves." The fog parted slightly, and in that brief glimpse, she saw them. Shapes of children, a girl with long tangled hair and a boy clutching a worn teddy bear, both smiling wide. Their smiles were too wide, stretching as if carved from the darkness itself. Then all at once, their faces twisted into something grotesque. The laughter turned sharp and chaotic, swirling around her. Eleanor turned to flee, but as she did, the ground beneath her gave way. She stumbled, barely catching herself. A sudden silence enveloped her, the giggles fading, the air heavy with an inexplicable weight. In that moment, an overwhelming realization settled in. She was not alone in the fog. From behind her, a whisper crept into her ear, that sing-song voice echoing back, now much closer. "Wanna play?" The mist clung tighter and the children's silhouettes appeared again, reaching out with small, cold hands. Panic surged as she felt their icy grips on her arms, an undeniable invitation far too sinister to refuse. Eleanor broke from the grasp and ran, but the whispering laughter pursued her, echoing in the fog until suddenly it stopped. She risked a glance back, the children gone, yet the fog swirled thicker, more alive. Returning home, she felt relief wash over her as the streetlights flickered back into full illumination, casting away shadows. But as she stepped inside, the familiar comfort of her home was pierced by the sharpness of that laughter, now echoing within the walls. Despair flooded her as she realized with every breath that the children had followed her. Each giggle now a promise, each footstep a reminder that in their game of hide and seek, she might never truly be found. Our journey continues. The next abandoned place might look like nothing more than a relic of the past, but what happened inside will send shivers down your spine. Let's step in. It was a fog-drenched evening when Eliza stumbled upon the old church. The weathered stone facade loomed like a specter in the mist, its bell tower reaching toward the sky as if to grasp the swirling vapor above. Across the brittle grass, she felt an inexplicable pull, the kind of pull one feels toward a secret long buried. The village had whispered tales about the place, prayers left unanswered, shadows that moved against the light. Local children dared each other to approach, but no one ever entered. With a glance back at the winding path she had taken, Eliza stepped inside, the heavy door creaking ominously as it swung wide. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of dust and decay. Broken pews lay scattered about, some overturned, others seemingly left in hasty abandon. Sunlight peeked through the stained glass windows, casting fragmented colors on the floor, but the effect was disconcerting, as if the light itself were struggling to enter. As she moved deeper into the church, there was an unsettling silence that wrapped around her, rendering the world outside an afterthought. The whispers of her village friends echoed in her mind, warnings of the strange happenings that surrounded this place. Some spoke of figures seen in the corners of vision, always just out of focus, while others recalled the chilling sound of children laughing, only to turn and find no one there. Eliza dismissed the thoughts, laughing nervously to herself, her footsteps the only sound breaking the profound quiet. Just as she reached the altar, she noticed a journal resting atop it, worn and dusty. She picked it up, turning the fragile pages, revealing entries written in an erratic scrawl. They spoke of visions, dreadful nightmares that intruded on waking hours, of an entity that demanded attention, a figure that emerged from the shadows. The last entry was frantic and incoherent, hinting at a mounting dread, a warning to never look behind. A chill raced down her spine. She felt an unshakable compulsion to glance back. Slowly, with the weight of foreboding upon her, she turned. There, in the far corner of the church, an unnatural darkness seemed to thicken, pulling at the corners of her vision. A silhouette lurked there, unmoving, just beyond the edges of the feeble light. Panic surged through her. Eliza tore her gaze away and dashed toward the door, heart pounding in her chest. Her fingers fumbled on the ancient handle, dread pooling in her stomach as she felt the heaviness of unseen eyes on her back. Just when the door swung open, a cold voice, almost a whisper, brushed against her ear. "Stay." She bolted into the fog, gasping for air, convinced she could still feel that dark presence at her heels. She ran down the path, the mist coiling around her legs like a serpent. The village lights glimmered in the distance, small beacons of hope. Yet as she sprinted towards them, an agonizing realization settled in her mind. She could still hear laughter, soft, taunting, echoing in the air, and with every step she took, the laughter persisted, blending seamlessly into the whispers of the night. As she reached the edge of the village, Eliza stumbled, tripping over her own feet. She looked back one last time, breathless, heart racing. The church stood stark against the fog, yet it was different now. Something about it was more alive, pulsing with a life of its own. The silhouette remained in the window, no longer a shadow but a figure, a person, grinning, watching her. The old church doors creaked open slowly, and the laughter crescendoed, intertwining with the fading whispers of her name, beckoning her back. She stood transfixed for a moment, the horror of her flight replaced by a growing curiosity, a need to understand what called her. Was it truly a nightmare, or had she awakened something that would never let her go? The fog cocooned her as she took a hesitant step back toward the darkness, and the laughter enveloped her like a shroud. And now we move to the final story, an abandoned estate where the walls themselves seem to whisper, and the darkness holds a secret you won't soon forget. The fog rolled in thick, pooling around the gnarled trees that lined the path leading to the old Holloway estate. Its once grand design had crumbled into a silhouette of despair over the years, its windows like empty eyes staring blankly into the darkness. Locals spoke in hushed tones of the last family that had lived there, their lives consumed by madness. It was said that those who entered the estate often did not return, or if they did, they were never quite themselves again. Sarah had always been drawn to the eerie allure of the place. On an October evening with the sun setting in a saturated orange sky, she finally resolved to uncover its secrets. Her heart raced as she approached the rotting front door, a shroud of dread wrapping around her like the mist. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open, its creaks echoing like whispers of the past. Inside, the air grew thick with the smell of mildew and decay. Dust motes danced in the dim light, filtering through the grime-covered windows. Sarah's footsteps whispered across the floorboards, which groaned in protest. She moved through the cavernous halls, her fingers trailing along the peeling wallpaper, each flake a reminder of the grandeur that once was. As she explored, she stumbled upon strange symbols etched into the woodwork, reminiscent of ancient runes, casting unsettling shadows. In the corner of the room stood a mirror, its surface fogged and crooked. Drawn to it, Sarah wiped a hand across the glass, revealing her reflection, a pale girl surrounded by darkness. But then something shifted, and she swore she saw another figure behind her, a fleeting glimpse of a woman with hollow eyes staring into her soul. Heart pounding, Sarah spun around, but the room was empty save for the flickering shadows cast by her own anxiety. She glanced back at the mirror, her reflection remained unchanged. Shaking off the encounter as a trick of the light, she ventured deeper into the house, the air growing colder with each step she took. She found herself in a sprawling parlor, the grandeur of its once fine furniture now cloaked in dust. There, on a table, lay a series of journals bound in cracked leather. Curiosity piqued, she carefully opened the first one, its pages yellowed and brittle. The entries detailed the unraveling of the Holloway family, their descent into madness chronicled with chilling precision. Whispers of things lurking behind the walls, voices calling from the shadows beckoning for release, tales of a darkness that fed upon despair. Suddenly the air thickened with an unseen presence, and the temperature dropped, an icy whisper brushing against her neck. "Leave this place," it seemed to chant, echoing off the walls. Sarah's heart raced, there had to be an exit. She dashed back, her pulse a wild drumbeat, but behind her, the shadows morphed and shifted. She burst into the hallway, retracing her steps, but losing her bearings. The house began to warp, the once familiar layout twisting like a labyrinth. Panic washed over her, the walls seemed to close in, sighing like a creature awakening from slumber. The whispers grew louder, chanting incomprehensible words until they merged into a cacophony of despair. In her frenzied flight, she caught sight of the mirror again down a dark corridor, its glass shimmering with an ethereal glow. Against her better judgment, she approached, drawn to its surface. This time, as she peered in, the other figure emerged fully, a gaunt woman, lips moving silently, her eyes wide with terror, pleading for help. But then Sarah saw the truth. The woman was not an apparition. It was her reflection, twisted and aged, her own face mournfully staring back at her, trapped within the glass like a bird in a cage. The whispers surged as realization hit. This was her fate, to be undone. Her mind splintered into shards, a prisoner of her curiosity. As the last vestiges of her sanity slipped away, darkness enveloped her, swallowing all light. In the depths, she could feel the weight of countless souls, lost, forever bound to the estate that had claimed so many. The house sighed, satisfied with its latest acquisition, while the echo of her own voice, now indistinguishable from the whispers, pleaded from within the mirror, begging the next visitor to turn back. But the fog outside continued to roll in, waiting patiently for its next secret. 6 stories, each one a reminder that fear hides everywhere, in the places we leave behind and in the ones we step into without suspicion. If these encounters unsettled you, imagine what else waits in the shadows, watching. Until next time, keep your eyes open and never trust the silence.